Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really unique philosophy of communication, one that says the most powerful things we share don't come from what we know, but from what we genuinely, truly love. So, let's get right into it. And this quote right here, it just nails the whole idea, doesn't it? It completely reframes how we think about sharing a belief. It's not some task you check off a list. Instead, it's what happens naturally when an experience is so powerful, it just has to come out. It's way less about persuasion and way more about passion. So let's dig into this first idea, an overflow of the heart. We're really looking at the motivation here. The point is that communication isn't a duty you have to perform, but the joyful, almost inevitable result of a deep inner experience. And this is such a crucial distinction. The Carmelite approach really draws a line in the sand. On one side, you have just knowing about something, an intellectual exercise, a formula. But on the other side, it's about living it. It's not a chore to be completed. It's the sharing of a profound joy that comes from a real, living relationship. Okay, so this brings us to this core practice, the contemplative apostolate. Now, that might sound a little formal, but the idea is actually incredibly simple and powerful. It just means that what you do on the outside, what you say and do, is just an inseparable extension of what's going on the inside. You're not trying to be authentic. Authenticity is just what happens. And this really gets to the heart of it. The impact of what you say doesn't come from being perfectly eloquent or having some slick technique. Not at all. It comes from the depth of your own personal experience. The words are really just the vehicle for a much deeper reality. All right, so let's look at how this philosophy actually shapes the message itself. Because when you see it from this perspective, it's not a lecture, and it's definitely not a sales pitch. It's a deeply personal invitation. To make this whole spiritual journey concept understandable, the tradition uses this amazing metaphor from St. Catherine of Siena, the idea of a bridge. It's such a simple image, but it makes an abstract idea feel totally concrete and relatable. So this journey across that symbolic bridge, well, it gets broken down into 5 pretty clear stages, and that forms the basic structure of the message. Okay, here are the 5 parts, but remember, this is not a script to memorize. Think of it more like a roadmap for a conversation. It starts with something we all feel, a fundamental human longing, and it ends with a very personal choice. First up is relationship. The whole conversation starts by affirming something we all get, that feeling of restlessness, that unspoken search for deeper meaning. This is described as a natural thirst for God, like we're hardwired for that very connection. Step 2 talks about the problem, which is called rebellion. But it's not framed as a list of rules you broke. Instead, it's seen as the thing that creates a spiritual chasm, a painful, profound sense of disconnection and isolation. It's all about a broken relationship, not just broken regulations. And here is where that bridge analogy becomes so powerful. Reconciliation. The solution is presented as Jesus himself being the living bridge that spans that chasm. This makes reconciliation feel less like some kind of transaction and more like a personal act of love that rebuilds the broken connection. Now we get to recreation, which focuses on what comes next. And this is so important because the goal isn't just a one-time fix. It's not just about simple forgiveness. It's about a continuous, ongoing process of transformation, of becoming a new creation. And finally, the message ends with a response, but it's not a demand. It's a personal invitation. It's a call to simply begin the journey, what's beautifully symbolized as the ascent of Mount Carmel, which is really just a lifelong process of growing closer to God. So if the philosophy is about an overflow from the heart and the message is a journey, then how do you actually deliver the invitation? Well, now we get to the practical how-to of sharing this whole thing. The whole method is completely grounded in respect. This is not a sales pitch, and you're not trying to win an argument. It's seen as a sacred conversation, an act of spiritual friendship where the relationship you have with a person always comes first. And it boils down to this really simple 3-step process. First, you prepare with prayer, get your own heart in the right place. Second, you start with a story, your story. And third, you make the invitation personal. It's about being intentional and, above all, authentic. But let's be real for a minute. What about that hesitation we all feel? What about that little voice in our heads, the inner critic that can stop us from sharing something we genuinely care about, whether that's a belief, a passion, or even a project we're working on? Yeah, this is a big one, right? The fear that it's going to feel forced or impersonal. None of us want to feel like a salesperson, and we certainly don't want to make a friend feel like a target. It's that worry that our genuine care is going to come across as just some kind of tactic. And this quote from Saint Therese of Lisieux is the perfect solution. It's all about reframing your own intention. If your motive is just genuine friendship and love, the action itself completely changes. It stops being a performance and starts being an act of offering something precious to someone you care for. And then there's this one, probably the most common objection of all, that universal feeling of inadequacy. That thought that says, I don't have the right words, I don't know enough, I'm not charismatic enough to pull this off. The Carmelite philosophy just shifts the focus here, and it's such a relief. It says your eloquence and skill are not the point. The pressure is off. The responsibility for the outcome isn't on you. You are simply the vessel. The call is just to be willing and to trust that that is more than enough. So, to wrap this all up, if our most authentic, our most powerful communication is really just an overflow of what fills our hearts, it leaves all of us with a very direct and personal question. What are we filling our hearts with every day?